being even shorter, I could probably just stand here. So there are advantages occasionally. So we wanted to do two things today, and I want to just kind of give you a reminder. As we said, we're trying to get, our ultimate goal is to try to get to these 4 to 5 areas. And so we've had this working group process. For those who've not been involved, we had working groups on infrastructure, equity, housing, and health, natural resources, and economic development. As well as we pulled in information from consortium meetings and from our steering committee, have also had contacts with others who were not able to come to some of our meetings. And we've been working with Center for Regional Change and ULI. So we've been doing a lot of work over the last couple of months, which you'll see reflected in the materials on your table. And so a lot of that work has been focused on what makes for a successful transit priority area, how might we measure that, and what are some of the considerations we should really look at as we're looking at the areas that were submitted for this initial round for the 4 to 5 that we ultimately end up with. We've had really diverse participation. We've actually been really pleased at the range of people and interests who've been represented. We've had everything from equity organizations, local conservancy groups, had developers, local government, affordable home interests, transit agencies, and a whole range of issues represented: public health, food access, needs of youth, seniors, persons with disabilities, water, energy, a whole variety of things. So I think we're really pleased that we seem to be bringing together kind of a broader cross-section of interests in this project, and we hope to keep building on that. Because of all of that, we got a lot of suggestions, which is really wonderful. We're thrilled with that. It's been a lot of work to try to kind of to make that into something usable, but at the same time, it's really been exciting to see the number of suggestions that people had. So we've taken those suggestions and we've tried to organize them. This orange sheet that's on your tables is kind of a representation. We organized the material from the working group meetings and all these other sources into kind of one place where people could see the contributions of all of the different groups and interests into the sort of these measures and considerations. So what you see here is the first column is kind of broad areas they fell into naturally, and the kinds of questions that seem to make sense to ask about transit priority areas. The second column are sort of suggested more general measures, and the third column are more specific considerations that we might use in this sort of screening process that we're embarked on. The last columns go back to the blueprint, MTP, and federal livability principles that we started out with in, I think, March, and that we had people sort of talk about which were more important to them. So we tried to track back the areas that people suggested and the kinds of considerations to those. And as you see, we've got a pretty good coverage across those different kinds of goals as we go through the pages. So that was nice to have kind of that confirmation that it's fitting in with some of what we said we wanted to try to achieve. So this is, today, we're going to focus actually on some subsets of these so it's a little bit more manageable. And you're going to have a chance in your small groups at your tables to review these suggestions and give us your feedback. First on the specific TPA considerations, and then on potential TPA performance measures. So I'm going to just kind of go through a quick overview. I know it's a lot to take in, so just to kind of talk about these broad areas first and what came out of them. So the Center for Regional Change has actually been looking at the demographics and kind of issues of vulnerability and areas of opportunity that transit priority areas might have. The pink sheets on your table are actually kind of a compilation of the things that they've been looking at, that the Equity, Health, and Housing Working Group has helped contribute to, and things that they will actually be mapping as part of this screening and assessment process. There's also a variety of other questions came up. What's the level of planning that's been done in these potential TPA areas. How much community engagement and involvement has there been to date? Is there support? Is there opposition? What's the status of zoning? Is it already zoned? Are there entitlements? Are they in that process or not? How do the existing and planned uses contribute to what we would call transit-oriented development? Is the design supportive of public safety? You know, there's sort of this design for safety orientation. Or for people aging in place, as we have more and more of us aging in our community, how might they contribute to helping to support that? Also support for transportation choices and active transportation, bicycling, walking, as well as transit use. Local parking and traffic standards, which have some impact on whether people want to use other modes or are encouraged to use other modes. The potential for economic development and community revitalization of some of these areas. Equity considerations, things like the affordability of housing, and will there be housing choice? Will there be access to jobs, education, healthcare, et cetera? Also, what's the level been so far of environmental review? And are there issues either of environmental risk, or are there opportunities to really protect the environment, natural resources in these areas? And lastly, that sort of bricks and mortar infrastructure. What's the capacity of the infrastructure in those areas? You know, the sewer, the water, the power, the drainage, road infrastructure. What's the cost of upgrading or expanding that? And are there opportunities for financing? And in general, are there opportunities for partnerships? So those were some of, it's kind of the larger questions that helped inform what you see in front of you. So we're going to move to our first discussion. And if you look at your blue sheet here, this long sheet, and for those of you who aren't colorblind, it's light blue. It says suggested TPA considerations in the second column. This is the sheet that we're going to work with first. And basically, these considerations in this column are things that we are looking at seeking information on the TPA submissions, plus the mapping from the Center for Regional Change that corresponds to the pink sheets, and helping to inform this process. We also are getting information from the jurisdictions, from our partners. SACOG already has, as you know, lots of data and lots of GIS mapping layers that we'll be bringing to this effort. But I did want to point out that there's some data limitations. So just for example, some things that we're finding are only collected at the county level. So it's very difficult to match them to a specific area that's a half a mile from a transit station or stop. Some data just simply is not available particularly. Others of it is very time intensive. For example, crime data from police departments and sheriff's department is by particular site and address. So trying to actually accumulate that into something usable would be extremely time intensive and difficult, unless somebody wants to take that on. So there are limitations to some of the things that we can actually look at, and so some of that is reflected here on the CRC sheet. There were suggestions, there are things that may ultimately move out of the it's not feasible at this time column, or move into we're really looking at it, or move into that we can map it, but in some cases we're not there yet. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. So in terms of your table discussion, what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to take a look at these suggested TPA considerations. They are kind of grouped into areas. And ask yourselves, did we collectively as a group, through all of these efforts and the working groups and all of this, basically get it right? Are these the things that we ought to be looking at as we assess our initial group of TPAs? And as we move through this longer term process of continuing to try to look at and encourage transit priority area development. In addition, are we missing something critical? And are there any data sources that you know of that might be useful to us that perhaps we don't know about, we haven't captured yet, et cetera? So that's the question that we're really looking at. What we'd like you to do is have that discussion